Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. My name is Elizabeth Hendriks, and I'm the Vice President of Restoration and Regeneration at WWF-Canada. I do want to take a moment to recognize that I'm on the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq in also known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. I've been working here at WWF for over 10 years, and I feel so lucky that I've gotten to and continue to make an impact for freshwater, wildlife and species, and our communities across this country. The world can be a really scary place, but here at WWF Canada, we're inspired and empowered to try and figure out how to make the world better. I'll be honest though, I've never done a Wildlife Wednesday, and while I'm really excited to learn from our species expert, Emily Giles, I'm kind of nervous to be a host. I think learning about short-eared owls is going to help. So let's dive in. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Liz. Hi, nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too.
Don't worry, you don't have to be nervous. You're doing a great job already. So we're just going to have a great talk about owls and answer some questions and hopefully get some good comments and questions from the audience today. So I'm coming today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And that's also known as Toronto, which is now home to many diverse nations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So for folks who don't know me, as Liz mentioned, my name is Emily Giles. And like Liz, I've also worked at WWF for a long time. I've been at WWF for 14 years now, which is great for me because I consider WWF very much to be my dream job. And I love having the chance to talk about wildlife like we're going to do today. So again, if you're just joining us, please, we'd love to hear where you're joining from today. Let us know in the comment box, where you're from. If you're a student, we'd love to hear from you, how old you are. Maybe you're joining with your class today. And as well, get your questions ready. You can enter them in now or later as we go throughout the morning here. So my official title here at WWF is Senior Species Specialist. So I get to work on projects to help protect and recover species at risk in Canada. And anyone that knows me knows that I love birds, and in particular, I love owls. So that's why I'm excited today to be talking about the short-eared owl, which we saw in that little intro clip. You can see that photo of the short-eared owl there behind us. I've had the privilege of actually seeing them in the wild a few times, and they've got some really unique features that I want to share with you guys today. So they're one of our medium-sized owls here in Canada. They're not huge like the great horned owl or the snowy owl, and they're not those itty bitty tiny ones like the saw-whet owl that we have on the WWF store that you can adopt. But they're gorgeous. Yeah, you can see them here in these images. They've got the bright yellow eyes as one of their key characteristics. Bright yellow eyes with black around the eyes and that pale facial disc. The really great thing about them is you can kind of see in these images, they're really well camouflaged. So they're actually really hard to see when they're sitting on a tree or sitting surrounded by vegetation. So the best time to see them is when they're out flying. When they're out flying and hunting, they only fly about a meter or so above the ground. So they're actually quite easy to spot. In terms of kind of bad news, unfortunately, just earlier this year, they were reassessed by the group of scientists who examines wildlife in Canada, and they are now considered to be a threatened species. So what that means is that the scientific body has recommended that they officially get listed under our Species at Risk Act as threatened because they have declined in population. And one of the main reasons for that is habitat loss. Habitat loss is a big threat to the species, and the short-eared owl has lost a lot of habitat, especially in their wintering grounds, where they formerly used to use a lot of grassland and coastal marshes as habitat, but sadly it's now gone.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful to understand what issues are facing this owl. But can we talk about some fun facts about short-eared owls? I don't know a lot about the species, and I don't know how people on the call today, what they know about. So maybe you can share some fun facts for us.
Sure. Yeah. Fun facts are always the best way to start, I think. The coolest, or one of the coolest things about the short-eared owls, their name actually is a total misnomer. They're called short-eared owls, so you expect that they'd have little short ears. But actually, what you can't see it in the photo there, and you can't often see it, but they do have, oh, there we go. There's a photo of them. They do have those short little ear tufts. But those aren't actually their ears. Those are just feathers. I
don't know why I think ear tufts is just such a cute terminology. I like that. Okay, what else?
It is a cute name. Yeah, it's just not the most accurate name. But the other thing that's neat about short-eared owls is, unlike other owl species, they're active in the daytime. In a term we call that being diurnal. So yeah, you think of owls, you think of nighttime, you think of, them sitting up high in the tree roosting at night. But these guys are actually active during the day, which is a bit unusual for an owl. So usually at dawn and dusk is when you're most likely to see them out and about hunting. So another fun fact is they like to actually nest in tall grasslands. So grasslands is one of the best places to see owls, like kind of those wide open spaces. They like to perch low to the ground. And as I mentioned, they fly also fairly close to the ground. So yeah, because of that camouflage, it's best to see them when they're actually in flight, or else they just kind of blend in and you can't see them. So one more fun fact, what I think is really cool too is short-eared owls are one of the few owls that will actually construct their own nests. Other owls, again, like the great horned owl, they roost in trees. They'll roost in existing holes in trees, either live or dead trees. But the short-eared owl will actually nest on the ground in a bowl that the female will actually kind of like scrape out for herself, and then line it with grasses and downy feathers.
Thanks. That's so interesting. Also, don't they fly only about a meter off the ground? So if I can imagine, for a short person like me, I could like potentially just see it fly by my face.
Yeah, it's true. They're not, you think of birds as being way up high in the sky, but not these guys.
Yeah.
But that also means you have to be careful when you're driving on the highway. One of the first times that I ever saw a short-eared owl was when it swooped right in front of my car.
Wow.
So they do often get hit on the roads.
And
they get hit sometimes at the airports too, because again, they like those open areas. So they hunt around airports a lot and can get hit there.
Wow. You'd think the noise would be too loud. Anyways, thanks. And if anyone would like to send in a question, please do. We'll try and get to everyone's questions. I see a couple already coming in, so thanks for that. Can we do a slightly deeper, but maybe a rapid round of questions?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Are you ready? All right.
Yeah.
What is the difference between a male and female?
So, yeah, that's a great question. Males and females are quite similar in appearance, but females are actually a bit larger than a male, which is not what we typically think. Usually in most species, again, males are the larger of the two sexes, but in owls and in short-eared owls, it's the female that's larger. They also tend to be a little bit darker in color than the males, and that likely helps them blend in a little bit more to their surroundings, so that when they're sitting on their nest, predators don't see them.
Okay, and if I was going to host them for dinner, or due to COVID restrictions, we were going to meet in a park, what do they eat?
When you have your owls over for dinner, so yeah, like I mentioned, they're diurnal. They're active during the daytime, which means they also eat other mammals and things that are out during the day. So they like those little small mammals. Typically mice and voles are really the main things that they go for, but also other small mammals like gophers and shrews and weasels. Sometimes they'll eat other small birds as well. And something else that's interesting to note is that they do tend to, their population tends to fluctuate. So if the vole population is really high, then the short-eared owl population will also likely cycle and be high as well.
Yeah, I love species cycles because it just reminds you how tightly linked we are to and species are. But okay, I will stick to takeout pizza and I will let the short-eared owl fend for themselves on dinner plans. Another question: how our country is huge. Where do they live?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the country is so huge and there is so many diverse habitats found across the country, and they can actually be found from coast to coast to coast. They're found in every province and territory, and in a wide variety of habitats. So I mentioned already that they really like grasslands and coastal marshes. They also like the Arctic tundra. You can find a lot of short-eared owls up north in the tundra. They like marshes. And in terms of where they nest, they prefer the nesting sites in those dense kind of grasslands, as well as tundra. Anywhere where there's some vegetation to help them kind of camouflage and hide their nest. But like many other species, they like large tracts of uninterrupted and good habitat.
All the space, I get it. It sounds like these owls are widespread. We can find them across the country. So how many are there in Canada?
Yeah, so when you think about all the diverse habitats that they can live in and the broad distribution that they have, those are typically when animals are kind of have that broad distribution, their populations are doing well. So it's one that you would assume that they should also be thriving and doing well. But as I mentioned, they were assessed earlier this year as threatened, which means that they are a species at risk of extinction. So it's estimated that there's only about 31,000 of these animals left, which is about 10% of the historical estimates for the owl.
That's nuts. 30,000 that's less than 2 Rogers stadiums. So if I'm thinking of the Rogers Stadium in Toronto, fits about 53,000. So 2 stadiums across the country of owls is so little. That's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not many, and they used to be considered a very common species, but they have experienced these widespread declines, particularly here in Canada, and really again it's habitat loss that is the main issue for the short-eared owl. It's a widespread and critical problem that's not just affecting species that are not just affecting short-eared owls, it's affecting other species as well. And we actually put out, WWF put out a Living Planet report, Canada, in 2020. And it looked at populations of species at risk in Canada. And we found that their populations had declined on average by 59% since 1970. So really showing that species at risk populations aren't recovering once they get designated that way. And we know that wildlife can't survive in these degraded habitats, or once their habitat has been lost, it's really hard to recover a species. But all that to say, there is good news too, and that we can reverse habitat loss. We can do things to help build back that habitat, and then in turn build back the short-eared owl population. So actually, that brings us kind of to our next questions that we wanted to talk about, Liz. We wanted to talk about the 10-year plan and what we're doing at WWF. So I think you're the best person to jump in and talk about that. But before we do that, maybe we can show the quick video that we have describing our plan.
Yes, I think so.
Great.
A stark warning on Canada's future.
The UN calls it a code red for humanity.
Carbon emissions are steadily
2030, we could reach an irreversible tipping
point. Will be irreversible.
Irreversible.
WWF-Canada is launching a 10-year plan to restore habitat, protect wildlife, and reduce carbon emissions. Together, we can regenerate Canada.
Oh, that's such a good quick video. And it's so important to know the root causes of species loss. But why I love talking about Regenerate Canada and the work we're doing is because it brings hope to species species like short-eared owl. Regenerate Canada is our 10-year plan. to expand habitat, fight climate change, and reverse wildlife loss. Drawing from scientific analysis and Indigenous guidance, all our conservation efforts will drive towards 3 goals. Restore. We want to get nature back. We want to restore 1 million hectares of lost ecosystem that provide that habitat to species like short-eared owls and sequester carbon in nature. Steward. At least 100 million hectares of vital ecosystem to ensure long-lasting networks of well-protected habitat for at-risk species. Finally, reduce carbon emissions by 30 megatons by restoring carbon-rich habitats and protecting current carbon stores. So let's keep the carbon in the ground and restore the carbon sinks that we can. So first of all, in this plan, we want to protect and leave nature as is. But the reality is that humans have left a big impact on Earth and for species like the short-eared owl. And we need to work to build back nature for wildlife and to fight climate change with nature. That is why we're focusing on the goal to restoration. So we need to put back nature, and we have to get to 1 million hectares of crucial ecosystem for wildlife across the country.
So Liz, can I ask a question too? When we're talking about restoration, what are we talking about exactly here? It's one of those terms that we throw around a lot, and maybe we don't know exactly what's behind that.
I know, right? It's a bit of a big word, but really it means we're working towards returning habitat to the best of our ability, back to the way it was. So what does habitat mean? It means the natural home of plants or animals. So we're doing kind of home renovations, so our home and nature works again. And we do this by putting nature back, such as planting trees or native species in gardens and shrubs. We also remove what doesn't work, like invasive species. And we can also do things like helping rivers run more freely by fixing river banks and removing barriers to water flow.
So, okay, I have another question, if you don't mind. So I have to admit that I don't typically think in hectares. I think in meters squared. Whenever I've done restoration, we do it in meters squared. So can you help me understand just how big 1 million hectares is?
Yeah, it's 1 million hectares is roughly the size of PEI. So it can potentially feel small, but done in the right places for the right species, restoring 1 million hectares is monumental task that will drastically improve ecosystems where at-risk species live. I do have some great examples of some of our on-the-ground restoration work that's already underway. So do you mind, Emily? I just want to talk about some of this great work. So first, one example is we work on the Wolastoq, the St. John River watershed in New Brunswick. It has faced decades of deforestation and increasingly is impacted by severe flooding. So we're working with community groups to restore habitat and recover up to 40 at-risk species.
And I'll just add here too, the short-eared owl was actually included in this plan. I was a part of this, and I know that the short-eared owl is one of the species that was considered likely to recover if we implement the actions that were recommended. So a bit of a good news story there too.
Yes, we're doing it.
Yeah.
We're also working in southern Ontario and southern Quebec, also the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And really, this region, highly developed, a lot of population there, is a hotspot for at-risk species. But intact habitats are hard to come by in this highly developed region. But we recognize at WWF that everyone has a role to play. So we're working with and supporting individuals, schools, businesses, and community organizations to bring back nature that's in their backyard. The last example I think worth noting is in the Sheshepawap region, or the central interior of BC, has significant cultural and ecological importance. However, habitats have been degraded due to industrial activities, a lot of forestry, as well as climate change related activities, major forest fires. So we're supporting Indigenous-led restoration in the region, starting with over 190,000 hectares of forest badly damaged by wildfires. So these goals are ambitious. It feels a bit intimidating, but we don't work alone to achieve these goals either. We work alongside all our partners. And it is the only way that we're going to build back this vital habitat to help prevent species like the short-eared owl from being lost forever. If you want to learn more about Regenerate Canada or to help fund our restoration work, please visit WWF.ca. And I think we will be putting those links in the chat box for everyone. Does anyone have comments? I see a few questions and comments coming by. Do we want to open it up for a Q&A period now?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a good time to get to some of these questions that are coming in. Do you want me to just dive in here? Okay.
Well, here I have one. Let me ask you this from Zaiden, 6 years old, wants to know, because I also like this question, if owls have long legs.
That is such a good question. Because you can't really see them because they're covered by their feathers. But yes, they do have long legs. The short-eared owls don't have as long of legs as, say, like the burrowing owl, which has very long legs. Those are the ones that live out in the prairies. But even the short-eared owls have pretty impressive legs that, again, are just hidden by all that fluff, so you can't see them very well.
I had no idea. I love it. Bonnie had two questions that I think are relevant, especially when have these owls, so I'm going to ask two-part question. Have these owls been spotted in cities? Good question, since so many of our audience, we live in cities. And also the 31K of owls, is that specific to the short-eared owls in Canada, or is that the population of all owls?
Okay, I'll start with that one first, since that's a quick and easy one. That's the population estimate for short-eared owls in Canada specifically. And then, have they been spotted much in cities? So you can see them in cities, but they're not common in cities. So it's not their preferred place to live. They like the grasslands, the wide open spaces, tall buildings and stuff is not usually where they want to live. But that being said, I have seen them like just north of the city. I've seen them in the Courtright Center. That's where I've seen them, and also Downsview Park. So some of those kind of more natural areas around the city. And I also used to work for a wildlife hospital in the city, and we would get them in sometimes. So they're definitely around.
Yeah, I guess kind of speaks to the importance of having protected areas or green spaces within our cities, right? So perhaps the downtown core isn't conducive to owls, but really having some green space around might draw them in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there might be one here for you, also from Bonnie. This one might be best for you, Liz.
I'll take it.
Yeah. She's asked, how do you recreate a swamp?
It's so difficult, and it takes years of planning. So that's why we always lead with, let's keep nature and protect nature where it is. It can be done. Swamps or wetlands can be recreated. You do have to work closely with government, with species experts, as well as understanding the water and freshwater resources and how it works on the land. But it can be done. It's slow, and it definitely takes time. And it's quite an expensive endeavor, but slowly.
Yeah, good point.
I think we might be ready for our trivia time.
Yeah, this is my favorite part, because then we get to quiz everyone to see how well you have been listening, and we turn the questions back on you.
I will read the questions, but they will also be on the screen, and feel free to pop your answers into the comment section. First question, where do short-eared owls nest?
Okay, so this is something that I mentioned, actually. I think in my intro when I was talking about the short-eared owls. I'll give a couple hints. We said it was different from other owl species. So you think of where owls typically are spotted. It's not where you'd see a short-eared owl. So that's my big hint. Oh, okay. I see Diana. Diana has entered a comment there. This is great.
Oh my gosh, this music makes me even stressed out. I'm very anxious for the answers to come on.
Okay, so the answer is, on the ground. They a little bit strangely, they do nest right there on the ground. It's the female that will make the nest. She'll kind of hollow out, flatten down a little area and just make the nest right there. So, yeah.
Well done, Diana.
Yeah, and Jacqueline.
What is the largest threat to short-eared owls?
Okay, well, this one, unfortunately, it isn't just the largest threat to short-eared owls. It's the largest threat to many wildlife in Canada, and in particular, species at risk. It's the threat here in Canada and also around the world. So yeah, it's one that we're working hard here at WWF to try and reverse and try as much as we can to try and, prevent as much as we can to help species.
Build up our homes. Let's not take them down.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I see a couple
Good
comments
coming in.
Yep. Great. Yeah. So it's habitat loss. It's sadly such a big issue here, and animals need that habitat. It's where they hunt. It's where they live. It's where they breed. So we've got to make sure that they've got good quality, intact habitat. So congrats to everyone there.
What is their preferred habitat type? Ooh, I think you said this a few times.
I think I did too. I did mention that they're sort of generalists in the sense that they live across the country. They live in many different provinces. They live in all of our provinces and territories. They're also found all around the world. I don't think I mentioned that either. They're found everywhere globally except for Antarctica and Australia. So it's got such a broad distribution. But they obviously have a preference of one kind of habitat that they like the best. And I did mention it a few times.
It's like the real global citizen.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, again, they like open spaces, so open grasslands, open meadows, coastal marshes, tundra, anywhere where they can see their prey and hunt. That's what they like. They don't like a ton of vegetation. That's their preference. So yeah.
Amazing. All right, last one. When are you most likely to see a short-eared owl?
So yeah, this one I also think I mentioned a couple of times. And if you even know the specific term for this, then you get an extra bonus point, I think. So yeah, there's, again, this is something that makes the short-eared owl a bit unique and different from other owls, because they, as some of you are already getting, they're a bit different. I don't want to give away the answer just yet.
No, it's a tricky word.
It's hard. But
the bonus point is tricky, I think.
Yeah. So yes, the answer is during the day, which is called diurnal. And if you're active at nighttime, it's called nocturnal. So yeah, it's a bit strange to see an owl out flying around during the day, but there you have it. That's what a short-eared owl does. So congrats. Thanks to everybody who played along with us, and a lot of you were listening and got the answers.
Yeah, thanks so much. And that was amazing, the answers coming in. I really don't want to work this afternoon. I want to go out and check out some grasslands and try and spot me an owl.
Go on an owl prowl.
Yeah,
we'll have to go.
Owl prowl, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I think that was really fun. I had fun. And Emily, thank you so much for teaching us so much about this really important species and what we can do to help with their recovery. Should we encourage them? The next edition of Wildlife Wednesday will be on the last Wednesday of every month.
Yeah, and I know that the next Wildlife Wednesday is going to be a really exciting one because we're going to talk about orcas, orca whales, and our colleague Hussein Aladina is going to lead that discussion and has a really special guest host with him, Dr. John Ford, who is from Fisheries and Oceans Canada and is a scientist emeritus there at DFO and one of the leading authority on killer whales. So that should be a really great discussion.
Amazing. Yeah, Hussein is incredible and so passionate. So I highly
just started drilling here right at the end. Sorry.
Emily has some of her own home renos happening. Thank you everyone for signing in and looking forward to seeing you next Wildlife Wednesday. Bye, Emily.
Thanks, everybody.